Welcome to Global Perspectives. In today's episode, we're going to be in a conversation with Dr. Pasang Dorji. Dr. Dorji served as the Member of Parliament of Bhutan from the year 2018 to 2023. Welcome to the show, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
Over the years, Nepal and Bhutan have had a relationship that's based on mutual respect and cultural affinity. Could you tell us something more about the historical relationship between these two countries?
When we talk about the historical relations between the two Eastern Himalayan countries, I think the expressions are very important. Both countries actually try to express themselves as small states that are between a yam between two rocks, and in other words, they also express themselves as between a hard place and a rock. I think these two expressions are adequate enough to look at how they look at each other. And when we talk about the geographical location of these two countries, and they are in the same Himalayan geographical space, and that has influenced a lot of their cultural relations and also people-to-people contacts. And if you look at history, we can see that there had been a lot of interactions between these two countries, especially in terms of spirituality. And over the years, I see a lot of spiritual exchange as well as in trade. I think there are a lot of things that two countries can learn from each other. So that area, I think, is yet to be explored to the optimum. And I wish that the two countries work towards having better relations.
When we have to talk about how the relationship has evolved over time, what do you think are the few milestones that you consider to be very significant?
If you look at the region, South Asia as a region, so both the countries are members of SAARC, and there all the members of the SAARC discussed and resolved a lot of issues that are in the interest of the region. And on most cases, these two countries have, especially as small states, they have stood by each other. So this, I think, these are some of the milestones that not many people actually look at. But I think this is something that we must acknowledge. And also, when it comes to the relationship beyond that political relationship, beyond that trading relationship, I think we have to look at the cultural relationship, which is more powerful than many other areas of relations. For example, there are a lot of Bhutanese who make pilgrimage to Nepal on an annual basis. So that actually shows, and the number has increased over the years. I think is a milestone. That shows that the two countries hold a lot of potential in strengthening their relations.
Mm-hmm. What are the current diplomatic priorities between Nepal and Bhutan?
Priority, of course, as two small states, I think the two governments will have similar priorities. Number one, to ensure that there is a voice, their independent voice in the region, in geopolitics, in any issues, be it climate, environment, whatever. But as I said earlier, belonging to the same region, facing similar challenges, I think the priority should be having a common voice on critical issues like climate change. So, as I said, this does not necessarily have to depend on the diplomatic decisions, political decisions. I think one way to look at is, I think the priority should be how to explore the people-to-people relations. I think there will be a lot of things that two countries can learn from each other in so many areas. So be it education, hospitality. So I think maybe when we conduct diplomacy between two countries, now how do we represent at the international level as two small states facing similar challenges, be it geopolitically, politically? So maybe we should also try to find a common ground or common voice that how small states could posture, in these challenging times.
Since we've talked about the possibilities, what are some of the challenges you see when it comes to trade and exchange between Bhutan and Nepal?
that we don't share borders, right? So there is no direct overland connection between Nepal and Bhutan. That could be one of the biggest challenges, but it does not mean that we cannot overcome. Maybe we should arrange the mechanism that will overcome such hurdles. So maybe both countries have good relations with India. So maybe there could be some sort of a trilateral arrangement to promote trade between Bhutan and Nepal, and even triangular trading relations between Nepal, Bhutan, India. I think that will go a long way.
Since you mentioned that Nepal and Bhutan are two small countries between two big giants, what are the roles of these two big giants, and how do you see that moving forward in the future?
This is an interesting question. Earlier, when we used to talk about the small states, they were not given much place in international relations discourse. But over the years, small states started playing a stabilizing role. So my argument is that since Bhutan and Nepal are between big states like China and India, so these two countries have critical role to stabilize the region. And you know that for reasons that we know, that China and India do not necessarily share good relations at the moment, but when it is the case, then these two smaller countries can play some critical role in stabilizing the region. Having good relations with both the countries will go a long way in stabilizing the region. So that's why I have been arguing that these two smaller states having good relations with China will somehow contribute to stabilizing the relationship between India and China. So there are some quarters that these two countries, Bhutan and Nepal, having good relations with China might disrupt the relationship between China and India. I think this argument is little traditional and little obsolete. Now I think we have to also look at the possibility that Bhutan and Nepal having good relations with China will also contribute to India and China having good relations between them. So I think these are some of the new perspectives that we might have to discuss.
How does Bhutan navigate its diplomatic relationship with neighbors like India and China?
This is reference to the expression I talked to you about, that Nepal and Bhutan look at themselves as a yam between two rocks, or that they are between the hot place and a rock. When we look at Bhutan's position in the region, I think the central to our foreign policy is the neutrality. In our diplomatic history, there is no record where Bhutan tried to pitch the powers against each other, and that actually remains Bhutan's standing and overarching foreign policy approach. So when it comes to your question that how it is navigating, I think there is a clear understanding between the countries around Bhutan that Bhutan stands for neutrality, and also, for example, at the moment, Bhutan does not have diplomatic relations with China. It does not mean that Bhutan does not have good relations with China. Bhutan shares good relations with both countries, India and China, and in the region Nepal. So when it comes to our priority, I think, is to ensure that the region is stable, that out of that stability, all the countries in the region benefit. So that is, I think, as a scholar, that is how I look at Bhutan's foreign policy, or in your language, how it navigates.
And what would be the key components inside what you call stability?
One of the biggest component in that stability theory is that it should not be a victim to the geopolitical rivalry, if there is. So I think that is very important. And as I look at the materials on Bhutan's foreign policy that others have written, so there is a tendency that pitches, that aligns the country to, one power, that does not necessarily have to be true. And our foreign policy is I find it very clear that it wants to be a neutral country, respect all the countries in the region and be one.
So you think it is possible to have good relations with both the countries?
Why not? When we have good relations, I think there is a narrative in international relations that when you have good relations with one country, you have to have bad relations with the other. I think this theory is wrong. I think our country can have good relations with all the countries. Why not? It's possible. But I think there are some quarters who try to pitch smaller countries against, the big powers. I think that has to get redefined.
Why do you think that happens? Why do you think there's that tendency?
Then we have to go back to that very traditional, age-old international relations theory. That in international relations, we don't have permanent friends and foes, but only permanent interest. I think that type of narrative comes when you are, the interest of the region or interest of the larger community of members are overshadowed by the respective personal interest.
What is the current national interest of Bhutan?
It's very simple. His Majesty has already pronounced the national vision, that it has to be a well-developed nation by 2034. So the nation led by His Majesty the King is geared towards that vision. That's our priority.
When you say national development, what do you include within this?
Everything, but it has to be anchored to the aspiration of the people. And His Majesty has very well said that it has to be a development that does not leave anybody behind. So that is the national aspiration led by His Majesty the King.
So when we talk about politics or when we talk about development of any country, we definitely talk about the youth. And youths in a lot of places, they're taken as people with no experience. So that is a very big disadvantage to them, even if they want to come into politics or any other sector. How does the Bhutanese government plan to fulfill the aspirations of the youth?
Any nation that takes governance, politics seriously is always concerned the issues that the youth face. In Bhutan as well, Bhutan is no exception. Unemployment rate is quite high in Bhutan. And the biggest issue the country is facing at the moment is the migration. Migration in the sense, educated people not being able to find opportunities that they would want to have in the country, moving out. So our priority is to ensure, as I told you, led by His Majesty the King, that we are aspiring to be a developed nation by 2034 that includes the interest of the youth. And His Majesty has repeatedly commanded and proclaimed that youth has to be central to development. So that way, as we pursue our dream to become a developed nation, I think automatically the interest of the youth will be taken care of. And I wish to see our youth who have left the country for better opportunities coming back in future.
Are there any key initiatives that are being planned or taking place to address this matter?
A lot. Number one, His Majesty the King has started something called, is a volunteer service, something called Desung. We call it Gardens of Peace. Under this program, there are a lot of upskilling, skilling programs going on. More than 24 of programs being implemented under that Desung program. So people learn how to do cooking, driving, a lot of things. So this is one very important initiative His Majesty has undertaken in the past few years. And I think this has brought about a lot of impact in the lives of our youth.
Can you tell us about the status of women when it comes to political participation in Bhutan?
We do not have something called quota system for our women politicians, but it does not mean that we don't encourage. The system does not discriminate Bhutanese women from joining politics. It's open, but unfortunately, I do not know the actual reasons, but unfortunately, we do not have many women coming forward to be in politics. So, unfortunately, in the last parliament, I think in this parliament, I think we have lesser women than in the previous parliament. So, maybe the reason could also be because our women have more responsibilities that they have to carry on than compared to men. So maybe this is something to do with the cultural issues and family responsibilities. But we are hoping that more women will join. But if you look at in our governance system, for sure we do not have many women in parliament. But if you look at our bureaucracy, some of the most critical positions are held by women. That means our women are better decision makers than male counterparts. Bhutanese women are either equally capable as men, if not better.
How has the historical representation of women been when it comes to politics?
Less. Of course, the number of women parliamentarians has always been lesser than that of male counterparts.
Do you think there's any special set of skills that women bring to the table?
Why not? There is a research done by the International Parliamentary Union, IPU, and that research has found out that when we have more women in parliament, they make more laws that are friendly to men. And at the same time, I think women are credited for making more, that holistic laws. That actually proves that women are better at making decisions, making laws. So these are some of the interesting research outcomes.
Thank you for being with us today. It was an honor having you here.
My pleasure.
Until we meet again for our next episode, remember, the conversation doesn't end here. Let's harness this momentum to drive real change. Because together, we are not just observers, but architects for a better world. Namaste.